Welcome to our third episode of Midwest Multifamily. We've got 1 and 2 under our belts. You can tell I still haven't changed my outfit or my, strong branding. But that's how we're here to have some fun. We're here part of P&R Companies. I'm here on our third episode again with our founder, Ryan Nelson. We have talked about the start of the company, the really cool story, the achievements this man has had in such a short time, and the achievements his company has had, and his values of innovation, hard work, perfecting your craft, and how he started in a trailer park in Superior, and now his company has built, not only has his first company as a plumbing and heating company been a part of close to 3,000 multifamily units as a plumbing and heating company. His company has also constructed from the ground up for their own portfolio 700 units in the last 7 to 8 years, averaging almost 100 units a year in the Twin Ports here in the Midwest of Duluth, Minnesota, Superior, Wisconsin. And we're going to talk now, and we're going to turn to the first building. We talked about how his company formed, his ideals, the work ethic, the struggles, and now we're going to get to that, that first building. How do you do it? How do you get over that hurdle? How, what happens when you call the first dirt guy? What happens when, the electrical goes wrong, or who do you hire? Calling the city, all these things. And so we're going to get into today with Ryan. And so Ryan, I'd like to start here. You guys are, you're back in time. You and Pete are sitting in the office. You've decided you want to build this building. First thing you have to do, get the land under contract, go to the city of Superior.
So the first building is actually in the village of Superior. So it's a township, not in the city.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the first thing we had to do was get the land under the contract. It had a distressed 8-unit apartment building that was on there. Single level, definitely not something that we were willing to keep.
Mm-hmm.
All intentions were to demo that building and put something new up there.
And so did you get those numbers on what it cost to demo even before you went to the purchase agreement?
No. We kind of just did the shotgun approach.
You did?
Yeah. So we knew the property fit the zoning, and we had the height that we needed to build the building that we wanted. We had the zoning we needed. We just needed, a couple approvals from the township.
So you didn't need to get zoning changed, nothing on your first building. Everything was there for you.
Yeah, I'd say that probably was the simplest process. It was under the acreage that we needed for it to have to go to state and go through, a lot of red tape down there. It didn't have to go through the city process. It was more or less like a rural build. So, if anybody's been involved with building a new house, when you build on the outskirts versus the city, it's usually a lot easier.
Well, and that's a great lesson because especially for anybody looking to build their first building. I mean, if you're here as a developer saying, hey, I know where these guys are from, and maybe I can catch a few tips from them. But if you're here to build your first building, that's a great lesson because we've gone through that planning and zoning process, and we've done it on other buildings. And not only does it take time, it costs money, and you give what we call NIMBYs a shot at your project, a chance to convince the council that it's not okay. So, whether the fact that you guys picked this and decided that having land that was ready to go, not necessarily shovel ready because you had to take a wrecking ball first, but that was an important first step for you guys. And so you got that. So you got that together. You've examined the planning and zoning. So there's a good thing to look at right there. What's your zoning like? What are your height requirements? How are you going to build it? What was next?
So the process was just making sure, like I said, we had, all the zoning in place, going to the village of Superior, getting the support from them, which was, going to a meeting, showing them the renderings of the building that we were going to do.
And now that village, did they have a city council? They have a township council? What did that look
They had
like?
a township meeting
Yeah,
once
okay.
a month. So that approval process happened faster than anyone that we've done.
Did you get good support, or did you have kind of some pushback, or?
No, I was supported
Okay.
right from the beginning. So
Because the village is kind of urban township, right? Like it's it's in town a little bit, but you're not out in the sticks, right?
right, I mean, it's just it touches the city of Superior.
Yeah.
It's only a couple miles long outside of the city.
So that probably helped a little bit, because I remember my first township meeting. It was kind of in the middle of nowhere in Minnesota, and I mean, we had a cowboy hat made out of camo. We had one pair of dirty boots. We had another one that just came in out of the field working, and it was an experience for me. I was working for Enbridge at the time, and we're talking about how to get easements and pipelines and things through their township, and it was a fun experience for me, because I showed up and they weren't sure to trust me who I was. I had a pad folio, and it almost made me the biggest geek in the room. And when I started talking hunting with these guys, all of a sudden they liked me. So you never know what you're going to get in a township meeting. So this is a good, this is good that you got support right off the bat. All right, you got your approval from the township. What did you have to look for next?
So we got the approval from the township. We had support on the project. Now we had to make the budgets work. So that was probably the toughest process. It took us over a year to actually get to learn how to put all the budgets together, and be confident with them.
So who was doing that with you? Was that you and your bookkeeper?
I mainly, at that point in the business, I mainly took on the development side of things. I was still running. I was project manager for other projects within the plumbing and heating company, but I took the role on to lead kind of on the development side. So I was putting the budgets together, reaching out to subcontractors that we had done work with, reaching out to, additional ones to try to at least get, 3 bids for each category of work that we were doing. We had reached out to construction managers that we had dealt with in the past, kind of asked them for their schedules, how they put things together, and we had gotten quite a bit of help there. So just being able to find, all the pieces of the puzzle and put them together was the biggest part of the project. And once we were able to get all the budgets put together, then it's like, now what's the other side of it? The other side of it is how much rent, will this unit provide? How much income will it provide, and will it be enough to satisfy the requirements of the bank? So,
I'd like to go back to the budget thing. And so this is, you're an expert at it now, but if anybody's, listening, thinking, how do I start this? I mean, where do you start? Did you start with a spreadsheet? I mean, because you guys, this is cool. You didn't have any help, and so you had to take this on yourself. Did you open up an Excel spreadsheet? Did you write it all down? Were you making phone calls to maybe connections you had in the industry and just taking, hey, what's a number on this? I mean, how does the dirt cost? How does the concrete cost? How did you start that specifically?
We had gotten spreadsheets from construction managers.
You did, okay.
That they use for their bidding process.
So you leaned on your connections a little bit.
Yep. And it's a pretty standard sheet. You can find that online somewhere.
Okay.
There's probably 50 cost codes on there that you just want to make sure that you're plugging numbers for each one of them, and more importantly, make sure you understand what each one of them are, because it might take 2 things to make up that one number, and just make sure that you know what them are.
Okay.
Don't try to do something that you don't know what you're doing on, especially when you're talking about 24 unit development.
And if you don't, who do you ask?
I would say that you would have to reach out to somebody that has the experience in what you're trying to do. And, there's plenty of places you can learn that information if you want. But to me, like, learning means so much more to be able to talk to somebody that has experience in doing it.
Well, that's a good note. I mean, you hear so much about having a mentor. Did you feel like you had a mentor, or you kind of leaned on just kind of those construction experiences? Because, what you had as an advantage versus most is that you'd been in the construction industry so much that you've already built these things. Do you feel like you found a mentor, or do you feel like you just got to lean on all of your connections?
Just really, I think I didn't really have a true mentor at that point.
Mm.
I was in it by myself at that point to figure out and make sure that we had everything covered going into the project. You kind of get some pushback at a certain point from
Mhm.
people.
Mhm.
People aren't willing to give up some information.
Mhm.
That's just the way life is, and
Competition, right?
yeah.
Yep.
So at some point, you got to take off on your own and try to figure things out, and that's what we did at that time.
Okay. And you've always been able to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of been, you and Pete against the world, and so you were ready to do it. And okay, now you got the cost codes. You start making phone calls, dirt work.
Yeah, yeah. After we had the breakdown, and I was comfortable that all of them cost codes that were there were able to add up to what it took to do the full job. Within reason of call it 10% or so. Just started making phone calls and tried to get at least a few bids on each scope of work that we were doing, and used a lot of numbers that you just can't get bids on everything. So you
Mhm.
got to try to do some digging outside of what you can get numbers from somebody else on, and provide your own numbers. So
How long does it take? You've called somebody for a bid. What does that look like? Do you call them on the phone and say, "Hey, I found you in," I mean, the yellow pages aren't a thing anymore, but I found you on Google, and could you give me a bid for this? I mean, did you already have the engineering and the specs drawn up? I imagine you did. The architect had already done that.
I'd say we had a set of drawings that were for a person that had a high level of experience in construction.
Okay.
Probably should have had better drawings. There was a lot of calls that were had to made out in the field, and it all worked out fine.
It
But
did.
um,
But you give them a call. You say, "Hey, I'd like your bid on dirt work, for example." I keep using that one, and does that take a week to get back? Does that take a couple weeks? I mean, what do you see for that turnaround if somebody's planning their schedule?
back then, I think you could do it in 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks.
Mhm.
Now, I think 4 to 6 weeks with multiple phone calls to
Wow.
try to pry a number out of somebody.
Just try and get somebody to
Yeah.
do it. Okay,
So
things have changed.
yeah, I mean, 2016 till now is a different story.
Yeah.
So our success could be different as if we started today, and ended 7 years from now, but could be better too.
Yeah. Well, so be ready for those of you out there. It takes time to get bids back. And all right, you have your bids. You got your number. Tell us about researching the rents now to make sure that this building is going to be successful.
So at that point, we had, just looked around the market and tried to figure out, the product we were going to deliver versus what product was out there within Superior.
Was apartments.com around back then?
We didn't use that at
No.
that point.
Yeah.
No. That wasn't real popular at that time. But we had to reach out to, some of the units in Duluth to be able to get comparables that we're able to compare our building with, because there was none.
So
There
did
was
you
no
use the
others.
spy method? Like, hey, I'd like to rent out one of your rooms. What, how much is it? Or
No, it was just, finding stuff online and getting information,
Okay.
and then, just taking information from what we thought we could get for rents too, and making a lot of assumptions on costs and stuff, because, the biggest thing that you have once you're to a point where we are today, call it 700 units, is you have history.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have any history.
Yep.
We had multiple smaller buildings, totally different aspect of operational costs.
That history is huge. Even as I go into our, negotiations for our newest buildings, when I first got here and started working in this, I had to come in your room and said, how are we building this? What's the, what is the cost? What's it going to look like? How many acres? And we've evolved as a company even since then. But now I know that I can sit in a room and say, hey, if we're going to build a 50 unit that's roughly about this, we're going to need this much in gap rent. We're going to need this much in development costs. And this is probably how much the building's going to cost. So that's absolutely invaluable. And it's for me, it's fun to hear how you got through this and relieving for me that I didn't have to. But how you got to do this, because I get the luxuries of your experience when I do my job, and so for people starting, it's it's interesting how you do this. That to make sure you research your rents. I mean, you want to make sure that if you're going to get into development, not only do you need your construction budget, but you also need to make sure you've researched your rents. And now, what did you find when you researched those rents?
I found that we were gonna have to set the bar and put the rents way outside of any other place in the city we were in. But call it the city right next to us, the rents were supported. So it was just knowing that we had what it took to be able to support the rents in this city and taking that risk. We weren't able to tell until the building was getting ready
So
to
you were
release.
close, but high is what you're thinking.
Yeah.
So at some point you could just pull out the 6-shooters and played cowboy. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. See, so it takes some stones to do this too.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, all right, now you've got your rents, you've got your research. It's time to break ground. What was that like?
So that was the fun part actually, because now we're back into what we know on what to do, right?
I suppose,
so,
yeah.
Outside of our mechanical business being successful, we've taken in all this knowledge throughout the years of being on all these buildings and seeing how things went and seeing how things didn't go well. So taking all of that in and being able to deliver it on our own job was really good, because it gave us a level of confidence that we could actually do a better job than others had.
Now, instead of being the plumbing and heating group that you're just kind of making suggestions to other people, you're the owner and you can tell them, right?
Yep.
And you can drive those efficiencies and you can drive those schedules. And so that's great. I mean, you're essentially this is your first step to becoming a wholly vertically integrated company. Now, I mean, if somebody said to you that you're doing vertical integration, did you know at the time you were doing it, or were you just doing it?
We were just doing it.
Yeah.
Like, it was, what's it going to take for us to get a building up, and the biggest fear is where's the devil? Like, I had a boss that was a good mentor to me throughout my career being a plumber, and he had said all the time, like, devil's in the details.
Mm-hmm.
He's either going to get you or you're going to find him. So that's where I went at with it. Like, I wanted to not let any surprises happen throughout the project, and it was thinking about the finished product as you're doing the dirt work.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about how the things were going to end up with the finishes and not what you're doing today.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing that helped me throughout the process.
So essentially what you do is, I mean, that's a great line. First of all, we should repeat that one. The devil's in the details. He's either going to get you or you're going to find him. That's a good one. And so what you're saying is one of the smartest things you can do is make sure the details are done right, but keep your eye on the finished prize. You know how they're gonna integrate in, right?
Yeah.
That's a good lesson. And now you're building the building, and now this is the most comfortable you felt so far, right?
Yep.
You're not running numbers. You're doing what you guys know, right? And now you're the owner. Now you're the manager, and now you're getting it done. So where do you start? I mean, do you start? Obviously, you started dirt work. You started plumbing. You get your concrete in. This was a slab style.
Yeah. So this is like a traditional house that wouldn't have a basement. Pretty simple foundation. Get to a point where you're pouring the slab, and then you're building 3 stories of apartments on top of it. A lot of the coordinating goes into the part before the slab gets poured, because there's just a ton of work that goes into that. So that, you're working out a lot of the problems that are happening within the building before you even start building it at that point.
There's got to be a lot of measuring and making sure the stubs come out right for the bathrooms. Like, do you ever have one of those, like, you pour concrete and you're like, that's off?
Yeah.
Has that ever happened?
Oh yeah.
Do you got to jackhammer that out, or what do you do?
Well, depends. When you're building your own building, you can usually move the wall.
And there you go. So you decide what the most efficient route is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. So groundwork, a lot of the planning is in the groundwork. Now, now you're going up framing, I imagine, right?
Yeah, so you're trying to you're always up against something, and a lot of times it's weather in this area. So we're pouring concrete in the middle of November. It's freezing out. We're trying to get this slab in. Um, Timeline's always your start time is always later than you think.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you want to start in June, you're probably not going to start till September. Then that's just construction. That's just the way it goes. Unless you got a lot of planning and involved and all the stars line up, there's just so many things that could come at you in between that always push you a couple months. So, and then just getting things done and getting ready for when winter comes to this area is huge. But at that time we were just comfortable with the process. We had been involved with it, probably 15 times over. We're always in that whole process together, being plumbers, coming up through the concrete and getting into the stud walls and making sure all that stuff's right. So it wasn't intimidating at all for us at that point.
Yeah, that's the coolest thing about this is the most intimidating part to most people is the actual construction.
Yeah.
For you guys, it was the pre-construction and the building. It's the easy part, right? And so I think that's what really makes PNR so different is because if there's something to construct, I mean, this is where we feel most comfortable. I mean, you can create things out of nowhere, and it's pretty cool. And so, you've now PNR has its own contracting company, but at the time, did you hire out the framing? That was somebody else that did that, right? You had a contractor do the framing.
Yeah, we did some research on contractors that we felt were kind of fit for this build.
Mm-hmm.
It was a decent sized build, so it was 24,000 square foot building. So we wanted to take somebody that had some experience in that, and we had found somebody in the area here to help us with it. And it was a prefabbed. All the walls were panelized in a factory in South Dakota and shipped here on a truck, and you kind of put it together like Legos. You had a print to follow. There's a lot more to it than that, but it did simplify the process. We weren't technically building the whole building here. Half of the work was done somewhere else.
So have you built a prefab building since then?
We prefab most all the walls that we can.
Yeah.
Everything that's fabbable, like we try to do that. Like before we fly it up with the cranes or do whatever we do to get it into place, we try to fabricate it.
Okay. And so still PNR is doing the plumbing and heating. You got the other group running the walls and everything else, right? Now, are you coordinating? You're coordinating all the subs. Then you're coordinating the electricians. You're coordinating You didn't hire another project manager or anything.
No, I had. We had people on site and that were doing their jobs that they were hired to do.
Okay.
I was still working as a project manager for the company, for my company, running plumbing and HVAC work. A lot of my time was not spent there during the day. It was evenings and early mornings. I would try to take any issues out of the project that I could. And I had comments from contractors that were working there that we didn't have supervision on site, but I was really trying to do it from my phone or do it in the morning or at night because I didn't have time to do it during the day. I still was working as a project manager for the company, and I had multiple jobs under my supervision at that time.
So who was running it?
During
the day. But you had nobody during the day. You just got in there.
Yeah,
that's tough.
You hire people that have experience doing the work, and give them documentation that makes them be able to do their job and answer questions from afar.
So you basically had good plumbers knew what to do. Good electricians, they knew what to do, right? Good, you had good framers, they knew what to do. So in a sense, by hiring the right people, you got to take away some of that, day-to-day supervision. That's definitely a great strategy. Well, one of the things that PNR is known for is its energy efficiency, and it's something we're going to talk about in later podcasts. But this is the first building you guys did. So talk a little bit about what kind of energy efficiency you put into this building, and then we can take that and show, the audience how it's evolved since then.
Yeah. So the thing that we do different than other developers do in their buildings is we really try to take the insulation and the envelope as serious as possible and try to keep every ounce of heat in the building or cooling in the building rather than letting it escape and be a waste. So we do a dense pack cellulose system, all the exterior walls, all the partition walls for noise, and all the floor systems. So it's both for noise and for R value. Just being able to have temperature control throughout the units. One person could have it at 75, the other person could have it at 68. It's not a problem in our buildings. And then also noise. We try to take care of the noise as much as we can. Apartments are there's always going to be noise in apartments, but we take it to the level that you can't take it any higher. We do everything we can. R value, we do the same with. Our walls are in like an R26. Our ceilings, the attic spaces are like an R60. The floor spaces are actually more pushing in the R90s just because we fill our, the cavities full in between the floors. And then when it comes to, once the envelope's done, well, how do you heat it and how do you cool it? Well, we take a lot of time and consideration into making sure that we're putting the most efficient systems in there that are going to drive the operational cost down as low as possible so we can pass that on to the customer.
So by doing this, it's twofold. One of the things that I've noticed that P&R really cares about is the tenants. I mean, not only do we genuinely care about the tenants because it's just kind of who we are as people, but a better tenant experience means you have a full building, right? People are happy to live there. And part of that tenant experience is not hearing people all the time, which, like you said, there's always going to be noise in an apartment building, but we have the most quiet apartment buildings. So not only did you build these things as energy as efficient as possible to, help with operating costs down the line, but you're creating a better tenant experience at the same time. And I think that's really cool to note and to stress because it's one of those, it's one of those values of P&R that's like, we're going to build it right and we're going to do a really good job and we're going to throw all that extra stuff. And that's kind of that elite mentality that you and Pete had as plumbers and HVAC guys. You learn this stuff and you put it into it. And, because you don't accept anything less than the best, not only are you helping the bottom line, but you're helping your tenants. And the funny thing is, by helping your tenants, you're helping the bottom line because people want to stay in the building. And so that's something that's really important to stress, I think, and to talk about. And we know that the systems, you and I know that the systems have evolved quite a bit. But for this one, how did you look at the HVAC systems and the heating and cooling? What did you use specifically in it?
Well, each building has kind of its own character, just depending on what kind of building it is. This building had off-street parking, but it wasn't parking that was within a heated space. So we were looking for the heating and cooling to be only within the units themselves. Being that this was a slab-on-grade building, 3 stories, we decided to use in-floor heating throughout the whole thing. So what that does is it gives the residents a level of comfort that you can't find anywhere else unless you have in-floor heat in the northern area.
It's nice to wake up on a negative 30-degree day and your feet are warm on the floors, right? Yeah.
The reality is you can set your thermostat 5 degrees cooler if you're heated from your feet up, and you're not heating the air. That it's a nice, comfortable way to live. Is have that in-floor heat. But so we were able to, put in-floor heat throughout the property.
Now, was that cost effective too, or was it, again, part of that tenant experience?
We considered it cost effective. Others would try to say that that's too expensive. Being that we know what we know how long it takes to do stuff, we know what it takes to maintain stuff. I still think today it's cost effective. I haven't been able to say that that's not the case anymore. So we put the tubing down, we put Gypcrete on top of it, which is, 1.5 inches of concrete on top of the subfloor or the plywood that you would normally put like your carpet or your flooring down on. And then that's our heating system. It's a central heating system. We pay the heat for the whole building, and we kind of figure out an average of what that is, and we build it in, throughout our operational costs. And that's how we figure out what our rents are going to be. The cooling side of things, we also provided the cooling at this building because it was the most cost-effective way to do it. We essentially had a central cooling system as well that we pay the cooling expense on, but it was the most efficient way to do it. And we use all VRF heat pump systems as well. So they also have the capability of doing heating. Mm-hmm. So you could heat and cool with these for, 10 months out of the year. So one of the most important things about the heating and cooling system, both in this building, is they're virtually silent. And that's what the residents are looking for, is to be able to have that heating and cooling capability without it having a bunch of decibels to come with it.
That's impressive. So, again, it's, you've managed to do this first building that you've done, and you've naturally found a way to increase the tenant experience, build a better building, and increase energy efficiency. You're reducing the carbon footprint of the building all at the same time. And it's not something a lot of people do. And I think what's important for, listeners to understand is like, this is one of the worst climates to build in the world, probably. And I don't mean to sound dramatic. I mean, Siberia probably sucks, but I don't know that they don't get the 90-degree summers that we get here. So you have to make sure they have to cool in the summer, and they actually have to heat in the winter. And, here's your first building, and you guys sounds like you would have built this like you built your own house. I mean, that's care. That's cool. And I think that's part of why people want to live in PR&R buildings. And so let's get to the fun stuff now. We've gone through the nuts and bolts of the building. Now your building's open. Tell me what that felt like to cut the ribbon the first time, or walk into it with the keys, or whatever that moment was for you that was really like, holy shit, we did it.
There was a lot that led up to that, from putting the heating and cooling into that point. But, it was a fast-paced project. It was about a 9-month build.
9 months? That's quick.
You kind of, at that point, you're setting your opening date because you're leasing your building out. We probably could have used another month, but we made 2 months happen in 1 month at the end. So just to have it open and have that part of it be done, and know that there wasn't anything scary that we didn't know about. The surprises that you always think about if you do something and you've never done it before, there's got to be things that you're gonna find that are gonna be just like, oh shit, mm-hmm. Like, where did this come from? How come I didn't know about this? Yeah. Or how come nobody told me about this?
You don't know what you don't know.
But, it just said that we did our research enough to know what we know. And, we took enough interest in what we did in the prior years that we were able to work all that out.
You found the devil.
Yeah.
He didn't get you. That's great.
We found the devil.
Yeah. So lease up was the coolest thing, opening the keys, or just because you were involved in the whole process, you kind of feel like there wasn't that really, that giant moment after you were done. I mean, did you guys hit the building with a champagne bottle, or
no? No, we just started on the next one.
You just started on the next one.
At that point, it was, we already were looking for an option for another building, and the lease up went so good.
How fast?
We were fully leased before we opened.
Wow.
So it just said that, the product was needed.
Yep.
People need a place to go to. They need some type of housing, sometimes for a year or two, or they need housing because they want to get out of something they're in. There's, 10 different scenarios of why people need apartment buildings.
And this was what year again? 2011, 2012?
No, this was in 2016.
This was 16. And so we weren't into the housing crisis at the time.
No,
No.
the interest rates were, good, getting pretty good at that point. They were on the downhill slide. Every month or every year was getting better at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So we were definitely in the position where we needed to be able to keep going.
Well, you've done it. I mean, that's, we're going through the history. You did it. You got your first building in. That's a good spot to get ready for our next episode. And so, again, thank you. This has been fun. Our third episode of Midwest Multifamily is in the books, and I'd like to thank everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks everyone.